Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Ask TotalBiscuit Anything Director's Cut. This is a series based on the AMA that I did over on r/CynicalBrit on the 29th of September. The questions have already been asked and answered, and are being expanded upon in this video series. First question comes in from Mixzilla10. Do you plan on doing anything special when you reach 1 million subscribers? Well, I've never really been one for arbitrary milestones. Occasionally I will do something. 500k, I think, is when I did the WTF-a-thon. 250k, wasn't that the Deus Ex thing? Or was that 100? One way or the other, it was there. Now, honestly, I was thinking of doing the entirety of Deus Ex and trying to do it from start to finish. Probably not in one sitting, maybe live streamed over a few days, but I'm just concerned if I were to do that, because it's the game that I respect and enjoy the most out of any game that's ever been made. So if you were to essentially do a Let's Play of it, it would have to be of the highest possible quality. There is no margin for error with the Deus Ex Let's Play, which is what that stream would be one way or the other. And I could just keep it on the live stream, I guess, and not even have it touch the YouTube channel, but I'm still Let's Playing Deus Ex, one way or the other, so how do you do that properly? I've been thinking for years that I wanted to actually try and do a full playthrough of Deus Ex in some respect. But I've always been gun-shy as a result of it being such a fantastic game. Would I miss something? If I missed even one thing in that playthrough, I think, honestly, I would never forgive myself for it, because it's a game that deserves as much attention to detail as possible. How do you do it well? Do you play it at the highest possible skill level? Maybe I could do that. I think I probably could. I can play it on realistic and actually beat it. I know that for a fact because I've done it. I've done it with melee weapons only. But even with all of that considered, I would probably still miss stuff. That game is super in-depth. I would be terrified of missing sections of it. I still find different parts of the game every time I go and do a playthrough of it, and I think I've beaten it a total of 9 times. Beaten it more than any other game in my library by a massive, massive margin. So how do you do it? You could, of course, even do it post-edited, which I would. I mean, there's no question I would never do a live commentary of Deus Ex. It just wouldn't happen. That's assuming I did decide to do a series on the channel, but even then, I could do a mission and then suddenly realize, I've missed this vital little thing, or just this nice little trinket or conversation that's really awesome. Some of the secrets found in that game are fantastic. It's really, really hard to even justify trying it. I wouldn't want to be the guy that criticizes most YouTube Let's Plays and then does one of the greatest game ever made and mucks it up. I would be forever known as that guy. So it's not the kind of thing that I want. I'll consider a few other things for the 1 million subscriber mark. I guess you kind of have to do something, but I don't necessarily know what it is yet. Here's one from Jonesy87. While I know Team Axiom is perhaps more Jenna's baby than yours, what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge in making the team successful? The funny thing is, some people on this channel probably don't even know that this exists because they don't pay attention to my StarCraft stuff, but I'm now letting you know. So CynicalBrit now actually has a team of its own, an esports team, and it's called Axiom. It is a StarCraft 2 pro gaming team that is being currently sponsored in Korea, and our first member is Crank, who is ex-Brood War player from STX and SK Telecom, as well as an ex-Slayers pro. He's currently playing the MLG versus Pro League MVP, where he's facing off against the best that the Brood War stars have to offer, and is tearing it up right there. So it's pretty damn awesome to watch him compete in his first tournament. But the whole point of Team Axiom is to be able to create and maintain a team house environment that promotes passion for the game and improves play across the board, while also being able to keep the team financially stable. Travel costs and accommodation are the two biggest concerns and the drains in our finances. But I've got to say that paying a Korean a salary is actually really easy. Korean players will often accept very low salaries because most of them, if not all of them, are actually not salaried at all on Korean teams. Maintaining the house and bringing him to the events that he wants to go to, now that's the difficult part, and it's the biggest expenditure. I've also got no doubt that Korean culture and having to compete with teams that are allowed to play in the Pro League is going to be very difficult as well, because in order to play in Pro League, you actually have to be a member of KESPA, which costs $100,000 entry fee, which is just unbelievably stupid. I have no idea if they're going to try and relax that when they realize, oh yeah, we actually need these players in Pro League so people will watch them, but I think they're relying currently on the star power of their existing players, and I don't really blame them because they do have that particular power even outside of Korea. Yeah, it's going to be a tough road. It's costly, certainly. It's taking quite a bit out of our monthly budget. The money that we're making on a monthly basis is slowly creeping up, so that's always good. We continue to expand the business and bring in more revenue, but still, it's a tough one. It really is. And I have a feeling that flights are going to cost us an absolute fortune, but we are working on it. We're seeing what can actually be done and trying to book the best possible flights for our player to also make sure he gets in on time and he's comfortable and he's not forced to do some really awful flight and be really tired by the time that he has to actually play in the tournament. Some of these tournaments are pretty damn grueling. You're playing the game over and over and over and over again for days straight. It's not easy. I think in the long run, we're probably hoping to set up a squad of 5 to 6 people with the aim to compete in the GSTL and IGN team leagues, as well as have enough people to promote a good practice environment and have a small team house setup of some description. We're working on it. It's going to take a while. Furzan asks, how many games do you receive daily to look at, and what is the rate between Indie and AAAs? Also, will you be at GDC next year? Well, I'd say we'll probably get between 3 to 5 games a day, and we really can't do them all. The ratio between Indie and AAA is something like 2 bazillion to 1. We rarely ever get AAAs. That is starting to change. But most of the time I have to buy the games myself in order to actually do a preview of them, which is also the reason that you don't really get videos on AAA games on day one of launch, because I just don't have the time. You've got to dedicate more time to a AAA release. You can't just do the first 15 minutes of the game, because it's going to be a tutorial. In fact, the first couple of hours are probably going to be a tutorial. That's just the way that they pace AAAs these days. Not to mention having to address the multiplayer, which more often than not is progression-based, which means you've got to play a bunch of that in order to even get a vague impression of it. So yeah, that's why you tend to get AAAs a lot later. You got Borderlands later, you got Darksiders later, although not by much. I mean, I think I managed that one in about 1 day. I just spent all day playing Darksiders, which is what gave me the opportunity to actually show the game and do that before I went off to that trip. But there are very rare occasions where we are able to get AAAs before release, and that is happening more and more. Sleeping Dogs was one of the first AAAs that we have had before release, and as a result, the video was very in-depth. I was able to completely deconstruct the game, show you every problem with it, show you every great thing about it, and show you it from a perspective of someone that had played quite a bit of it. And that video was lengthy, and hey, look what happens. A lot of people watched that video. I think it's the most watched... Yeah, I believe it is the most watched critic/review content on YouTube about that particular game. So that's pretty awesome. I'm a big fan of that. So some companies are starting to come around to the idea that YouTube is actually a good place to market their game, but you also got to bear in mind they're deathly afraid of the power individual commentators have and the fact that they can be completely honest and are not beholden to anybody. I'd just like to point something out. Note how 2K actually gave the creatures an exclusive on Borderlands 2. You want to know why that is? It's because they're a Let's Play group. They're not actually critics. They took the low-risk option to market their game rather than actually give it to any YouTube critics or reviewers. You didn't see any YouTube reviews of this game come out prior to release, because they just flat out refused to give copies to anybody. We've had to struggle with 2K. I mean, they're actually really difficult to deal with. They're one of the most difficult, I think, out of any of the publishers that we currently deal with. But there are others that are starting to come around to our way of thinking. Square Enix is a good example. There's a couple more that I don't really want to talk about, but probably in the next month or so, you're going to see the fruits of our labor when it comes to working with PR companies to try and get our foot in the door when it comes to major publishers. I'd say that Square Enix is probably the most savvy right now. I mean, they gave Sleeping Dogs to a wide variety of YouTube people to do with it as they wished, and they reaped the rewards of that. They really did. It got a lot of positive coverage because it's a good game, and I think it sold a hell of a lot more copies as a result of that than it would have otherwise. And just bear in mind that this is free marketing. Even if you say bad things about the game, you're still getting hundreds of thousands of eyes on your product that you wouldn't get otherwise. And that is so vitally important. And even when I destroy an indie game, on WTF is. It's still 100,000 eyes that wouldn't have been on that game otherwise. And you know what some people might say? I'm okay with those flaws. I actually really like this genre. I wasn't aware that this was out. So you know what? I'm going to actually make sure that I purchase this game. And I wouldn't have done so if I hadn't watched that video. So I think that we're probably going to end up getting many, many more games as we go through, especially through to November. And I'm intrigued to see which of the major publishers decide to play ball with us and which decide to ignore us. I mean, one way or the other, the video's coming out. You can't stop it. So you might as well give the commentator some time to work on your game. This is why it's beneficial. A lot of people are trying to rush to get the content out first. With me, it's first impressions, and it's also a time issue. I need to cover a lot of games because people want me to cover a lot of games. I am a variety gaming channel. But if I don't get a AAA game until day one launch, and I'm having to also deal with a bunch of other stuff, then the chances are I'm not going to be able to dedicate as much time to your game as I would have otherwise been able to. You get it to me a week in advance, and the video you're going to get at the end is probably like 40 minutes to an hour long in great detail. But I guess that's also a little bit scary to some publishers, because a lot of detail can also reveal a lot of flaws. And it can be very analytical, and it can start to pick the game apart, and maybe they don't like that. We'll see. I think that things are getting better, certainly, from that front. Will I be at GDC next year? I don't know. I don't plan that far ahead. Here's one from Eisenblade. Have you ever visited and possibly even recorded a game at a big event like PAX or E3 and decided that the game was so bad it wasn't worth publishing a video of? Well, I think the only reason behind not releasing a video from a show is that the recording itself was too bad. I let the viewers judge whether or not the game is actually any good. Orcs Attack is a good recent example of this. That is not a good game, and the viewers absolutely tore it apart. But it's not my job at events to be super critical with a dev standing beside me. It's to let the dev show the game, explain it, give lots of good info, and then let the actual viewer base judge for itself. Anyone with common sense can figure out which games I really enjoy at a show and which I'm just going through the motions on or secretly dislike. When it comes down to coverage at shows, it's a fairly unique recording environment which has its own set of unique challenges. When you are recording at PAX, you are gonna be recording with a dev, because there are devs manning pretty much every station, and the AAAs won't let you film anyway. So those ones that don't have devs, you're not gonna be able to get coverage of. Those that you can get coverage of will have devs with you. So usually a dual commentary is a good format in that regard. Now, some people don't like the dual commentary format, and I can definitely see why, because it's less of my opinion and it's more of the developer showing the game, and I do get opportunities to pose questions that would cause challenges. I think during the Recoil video, which is probably why the video actually turned out so well, I was able to present questions that weren't uber critical, but still got the responses that I wanted out of the developer. Because my feelings at the time about Recoil were, well, it's fun, it's good to play, but what is it offering? What's new, and why should this be paid attention to as opposed to a bunch of other FPSs? And after I had the chance to talk to a lot of competitive players later on, they were saying, oh, this is a really good competitive game. It's well balanced, it feels great, the modding community could cause all sorts of great things to happen, they're very open with their development. And like, oh, right, okay, well, that's cool. But I do know that a lot of people just prefer watching me play a game and giving my opinion. And when I get the chance to do that, I do. But here's the thing. If I show a game at a show, the chances are that when it comes out, I will also do a video of it then. So you will get that perspective. Anything that comes out on PC that I get the chance to play on release, I will be able to do a full opinion video on. The main problem is that at some of these shows, I play some console games, and I just don't do that. I do not cover console games in WTF outside of show environments. It just doesn't happen. Yeah, I know, there's the exception of the Final Fantasy thing, if I recall correctly, but aside from that, that really is about it. So stuff like Charlie Murder probably won't get an assessment unless it ends up on PC. Stuff like Mark of the Ninja is coming out on PC, and I have code for it. Whoop whoop. So when that game comes out, you will have a full opinion on the PC version of Mark of the Ninja. So yeah, the thing about this channel is that I have flexibility, and I'm able to do videos of stuff I've already done before. I mean, how many videos have I done of War of the Roses? 4, 5 maybe? And I've been able to track that throughout the development process, which is actually a really cool thing to let viewers see, because they usually don't get the chance to see go from closed alpha all the way through to release and then assessments along the way, and you note the changes that have been made balance-wise and in terms of polish. Now, we have lost a good few videos because the recording environment at a show has been subpar. The Closure video is a good example. We did a dual commentary of Closure. Now, bear in mind, that game is just black and white, and the camera absolutely hated it. It wasn't on PC, it was the PS3 version, so we could not record via fraps, so it did not come out well at all. It looked absolutely disgraceful. So when Closure actually came out on Steam, I did another video of it to replace that, which is why you have WTF is Closure. I also have another video of a game called The Swapper, which is absolutely beautiful, but we had to cam it because their computer was locked by the venue and we couldn't install Fraps on it because we didn't have the admin password. Now, I'm still debating whether or not to actually release that video because I don't think it shows the game in such a great way, and I don't think that's fair because the art style for that game is absolutely gorgeous, and it doesn't come through the same way pointing at a screen. There are times when I can get footage of a screen that's absolutely phenomenal. Some of the stuff from Gamescom is a great example because we had a perfect recording environment. There was some that you couldn't even tell, and that was great. But unfortunately, there are others where you're in a nasty recording environment, the lighting sucks, things are reflective, and it is just an absolute disaster as a result. It's unfortunate. There's actually a game called Age of Wushu, which we did a really in-depth video on, and we couldn't use it because the angle we had to record at in their tiny little cubicle at E3 was so terrible that it shows the game in a bad light, so I had to scrap that video. But I never stop myself releasing a video if I think the game is really bad. You know, the Orcs Attack video got a really bad reception, and it's not really my fault. I mean, I wasn't the one who made the game. I tried to make it as entertaining as possible, but at the end of the day, it's not a very good game in its current state. Maybe it'll get better, but I don't know. I mean, I hated the puerile sense of humor with it, there's no question. Generally speaking, though, most games are at least vaguely enjoyable. As much as being a critic teaches you to see the bad in everything, it also teaches you to look for positive aspects in the game that you're playing. And there aren't all that many truly awful games these days. Most of them at least have something that's good about them, but that's not necessarily enough to redeem the entire product. So, there you go. I don't stop myself, and I certainly don't censor videos from events like that. I just leave it up to you guys, and I try to present the game in the fairest possible light, and then the game can either sink or swim on that basis. Alright folks, that is me done for this episode of the AMA. Thank you very much. Still plenty more episodes to go. My name has been TotalBiscuit, and I shall see you next time.